The board appreciates the break. Okay, so I'm going to reconvene the meeting and get moving on with the agenda. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Any questions or discussion from the board?
So if we were to add to the minutes what Karina had brought up here, would this be the appropriate time to ask for that, or would that be later in our meeting?
No, it would be the appropriate time, because if you approve the minutes, then you're finalizing the minutes from the April 26th meeting.
I'm
So,
not sure if this was the meeting that she was referring to.
yeah,
Oh, it
the
is
regular
this-
meeting
it
is
is
the
this.
26th.
So I would like to make a motion to pull that off then, or can we do it within that?
Sure, yeah, we're happy to revise the minutes to reflect the question and the response. And I would just suggest, for the sake of time and expediency, we'll just friendly consent. We will do that, and then we'll just return them on the June 7th revised for that consent agenda.
I think consent is great.
Thank you. Any other questions, discussion from the board on this item? No, then I'm going to call for a vote. And the consent agenda is approved unanimously. Next item on the agenda, pardon me here. Oh, no, I'm up to date. The next item on the agenda is our first action item, which is the second reading of the Enrollment Demographics Task Force recommendation. As this is the second reading as an action item, and I'd like to ask for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Can we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion, questions on this recommendation?
Since we did this, and this was the one that we did slightly backwards, we did the study session after we had the first reading. If the superintendent could give like the 30-second to 60-second summary of what was presented to the board before we take our action.
So the EDTF has been meeting to review, as they do on an ongoing basis, our ongoing enrollment and facility needs, demographic trends in the district. So they have made a three-part recommendation to the board. That is that we move forward with planning for a 500-student elementary and a 700-student middle school with the potential for shared space that could flex those numbers across those two facilities. As well as a minimum 24 to potentially larger classroom wing addition that would be shared between Skyview and Canyon Creek, again, that space could be flexed. And that those projects, either in total or in a phased manner, would be included as part of our 2018 bond. So then that will activate the process of now this going to the capital bond planning task force as they begin their work prepping for the 2018 bond. Second part of the recommendation is to continue to look for property, primarily in the north end of the district, for future growth, and continue to analyze space and capacity issues on the east side of the district in light of demographic trends, legislative changes, for the potential of a school consolidation. There's nothing imminently planned, but it's something that I think the task force feels strongly needs to be kept at the forefront. And just as a reminder for the board, we hope to be finally at a point where we can qualify for school construction impact fees. However, that process requires that there is an approved plan that would address facility needs, and so board action on the recommendation tonight would provide that approved plan that we can incorporate into our update to our capital facilities plan that's due to Snohomish County in the next couple of weeks. So that's the thumbnail.
Thank you very much. And then I just would like to say I'm going to be very much in favor of this because of the impact fees, because the amazing creativity that allows both for the site with the junior high at the Canyon Creek Skyview, as well as the Baldy site. I think it's just a fabulous idea, and it meets many needs, and the EDTF continues to work very effectively to meet the needs, many needs of the stakeholders in the district. So I'll be voting in favor.
I'd like to second what Director Smith said. I would like to explicitly express appreciation for the creative thinking, problem solving that was demonstrated by everyone in the EDTF, which I got to witness firsthand, and it really is a testament to the district and a source of pride for the district. So I'd like to thank them for the out-of-box thinking.
I'll third that. I really appreciated that we were given an option to look at a flexible plan and flexible classroom space, which I think from what we've seen in how we've had the expansion and then we stopped growing due to the economic downturn and then we didn't have time to readjust again, I think it gives us it gives us several different options moving forward depending on how the economy shakes out in the next several years and how our enrollment ends up going. So I was very pleased, and I think this is a task force that we've done very well.
Other comments or questions from the board? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. That item passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, shuffle, is the action item for the second reading of the middle school academics program recommendation. I'm going to go ahead and read this. On April 22nd, 2016, the school board received information from the middle school grade reconfiguration task force and middle school academics subcommittee regarding 4 program options for middle schools beginning in 2017. Those 4 options were also prioritized by level of support, both from the subcommittee members and members of the task force. In addition, board members also received an executive summary detailing the work of the task force and subcommittee and a number of supporting documents which the subcommittee used in their work. Board members also held 2 study sessions to review and consider the program options and supporting documentation. At the May 4th, 2016 study session, the special meeting held, the board voted to move forward options 1 and 3, only for further consideration at the May 10th and 24th, 2016 board meeting. And again, I'd like to, first of all, before we move forward on this, thank you to everyone who worked deliberately on this topic. Thank you especially to Heather Miller and Gretchen Schaefer for leading the work, and to all who invested countless hours studying details, including the board here, who I know personal experience has spent many hours. So what I'm going to propose as board chair for logistically for the structure of the vote, I'm going to first of all ask if there's any, no, scratch that. I'm going to ask for a board member to make a motion as for one of the options, and therefore for a second. It's under Robert's rules, we have to make a motion before we can have discussion or questions. So right after the motion, I'm going to see if anyone has any questions for staff who are here before we go forward. So I'm going to ask a board member to make a motion, then ask if anyone has any questions, and then I'm going to systematically allow the board to provide comments before we actually call for the votes. And I'd like to do it just in order. I'm willing to start it. And I'd like to do it just in order. Customarily, with large votes of this size, the board does appreciate the opportunity to explain their vote, and that's I think a very systematic way of doing it. It was the best structure. And then after we've progressed through that, I'll call for a vote. If the motion does not pass, I will ask someone to make a motion for the other option, and then I'll give a quick opportunity for board members to provide, again, any commentary. I'm assuming that it would be a pretty quick second vote.
I'd like to make a motion for option 3.
Second.
Okay, so a motion has been made to accept option 3. Are there any questions for staff or for anyone here before we go into?
I'd like to ask for the clarification on when we're voting on option 3, what are we voting on in regards to math?
Okay, yeah, no, can we ask for that clarification, Heather? So can we talk about the progress on math within the task force?
Yes, I
I will just read what's in the executive summary because we haven't proceeded any further with math. It states that math acceleration, the subcommittee recommended by consensus that math acceleration will continue to occur. A team of teachers will meet to identify the math program for grades 6, 7, 8, the transition from elementary to middle school. So that is where we're at with the math acceleration as written in the executive summary.
So I feel like that's the answers that I got about challenge when I asked in October, November, and December, was that we weren't getting rid of challenge and we weren't sure where we were at. And now I'm being told that I'm coming on the back end questioning people. So I would like to ask clear questions about it. Is this, are we getting rid of the option for people to choose a so-called, what we have, challenge math, if we choose option 3? Or is that being looked at being taken away and off of the table? And to me, a middle ground answer isn't going to be okay at this point, because that's why I waited throughout the process until February to be able to start speaking directly to this.
So math acceleration, the subcommittee voted to continue with math acceleration. The middle school task force endorsed that. It's written in the recommendation that a team of teachers will meet to identify the math program for grades 6, 7, and 8. That work will
Understand what that
continue.
means.
So there will be math acceleration. How that will work needs to be coordinated because currently we're doing 7th grade challenge math. And now with 6th grade coming online to middle schools, we need to look at the sequence from grades 5 to 6, 6 to 7, so that we make sure that we're studying that and maintaining the math acceleration for students who are ahead in their trajectory through that 6th and 7th grade year. So a team of teachers needs to get together next year, and that'll be the focus of their work starting probably in August.
So that's what I was told about challenge, and I was told that there were no options, and I really would like to have clarity right now. If my daughter is in the 5th grade and she chooses to go, she goes into 6th grade, and then she chooses, if we keep option 3 and she chooses challenge courses, will she be able to choose challenge math?
So I'm going to state, I
Will
know
she
Kim
test
here.
in? But this is,
It's maintain math acceleration. That's what the subcommittee recommended, and that's what the middle school task force recommended as well. So it's maintain math acceleration. So I don't want to stand up here and give you some information that may not be accurate, because I want to make sure that I'm true to the work of the subcommittee and the task force about maintaining math acceleration. And we need to get a group together to exactly what you're saying. What does it look like from 5th to 6th and 6th to 7th? But we have written in maintain math acceleration.
so when I ask the question then, and a proposal's made a year from now, and I'm told that now children, or now 7th graders will not have the option for challenge math, I'm also not going to be reprimanded by anybody for then asking the hard questions. I didn't know that this was where we were going.
There is not an intent to not have challenge math 7. It's the trajectory from what it looks like from 5th to 6th to 6th to 7th. There was a conversation about not calling it challenge anymore, so do we call it something different? But I can't give you an exact definite picture of what it looks like from 5 to 6 and 6 to 7, because we need to still do that work. I will be true to what the recommendation is. It says maintain math acceleration. We want to have challenge math 7 for kids. Is it a different name? Is it something different? We still do the double jump testing. That's going to continue.
So
I'm not trying to avoid your question. I'm really just trying to make sure that I'm true to the process.
Go ahead. Yeah, so if I can suggest, so in having heard this question, it's been asked, and the question is, it's not the clarity. You can understand that we're not hearing challenge math and double jump and what it is. And so perhaps a way of clarifying this is that, and one of the questions is this going to be decided by our shared decision-making model, or is it decided by the team of teachers, and does the board have input into the final recommendation for math for 6, 7, and 8? And so I think what I'm hearing from the community is a desire to use our shared decision-making process, so that would include parents, that would include students, and that proposal for math would come back to the board for final approval. being a fairly significant curriculum design, which by our CWs really is our responsibility as far as I understand it. Because what I see this, and what I hear you say, that this is assigning the math, it's using math acceleration, which is an undefined term, and it's setting that to a team of teachers, and I'm not sure that that's, if that's what the board wants to do, then the board could do that. My sense is that if we really wanted to be involved in that decision and make sure, we could vote for that to be shared decision-making and for the decision to come back to the board, just like this decision is coming to the board.
And certainly the process has not been defined yet, as you say, Ken. We have not defined what that process looks like or even had conversations about it at this point.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? So I understand that because the task force has limited time to get together, there's only so many questions to tackle at once. So I understand that, and I just want to make sure my understanding is as accurate as we can be at this point in time. So there hasn't been any agreement amongst the task force that they would recommend that the math program in 7th and 8th grade would change. It's more a study of, because 6th grade is moving up to the middle school, now what should we do with 6th grade because it's in the middle school? Do I understand that correctly?
Correct, that the math was taken off early on the subcommittee. That was not going to be a discussion. The AAP program and the math came off early on, acknowledging that we needed to continue with math acceleration, and then further on, once we got through this process, then we would look at what process would be utilized for the next steps of looking at the math program.
Okay.
So we haven't even had a conversation about what that process should look like, who should be involved, nothing since October when it came off the table.
Okay.
Can we include the word self-select into it? Into the math program? And have
For
option
7th.
3 include self-select for 7th and 8th?
And I guess that was where, as I was hearing some of the questions that were arising, so math acceleration is, Vice President D'Angelo brings up, does not, and it could be teacher select or testing select into a math acceleration. And so the concern is there self-select opportunity for math acceleration, and as written, it's indeterminate, if that's the case, is I believe a concern that has been raised.
And I have to be honest about it, that when I was looking at self-select, that was not clear to me, though it might have been clear. I don't know if it was clear to the board. I don't think it was clear to Amy when she asked the question, or when you mentioned to one of our community members that we're not getting rid, with option 3, it doesn't get rid of the self-select option. So I don't think it was clear to you, it wasn't clear to me that that potentially was off the table in option 3.
And so if I could just add, because I'm trying to move it to a vote, the notion of that it would be self-select math acceleration and double jump math acceleration unless the committee brings a different proposal to the board. Is that's what I'm, yeah. But that's not what's written here.
Okay, so I'm gonna try and sum this
Shall-
up. Go ahead, Heather.
I was just, so on option 3,
Mhm.
it speaks to English, social studies, and science. So we didn't dig into the math. We didn't have conversations about the math. Once the subcommittee took it off the table, then it didn't come up again. So other than exactly what is written here, that we would maintain math acceleration. So we don't have anything in our recommendation on math other than that piece. If the board wants to amend something and add something, certainly you have the prerogative to do that. Yeah, so we didn't. So I can't speak to that piece of it.
So what I was, again, to try and keep us moving forward, what I'd like to, we have in front of us, unless someone wants to move, we have in front of us a recommendation for 3 subject areas. There does seem to be some questions about math, but it seems, I can understand when I'm asked to speak on behalf of the board and work hasn't been done, I understand it can be challenging you don't want to speak and misrepresent a decision that hasn't been made, because I've been in that position personally myself. It is a tricky position to be in. I appreciate you trying to balance the fact that you haven't been able to sit down and study it, and therefore you don't have the detail. So we do have in front of us a recommendation for the 3 academic areas. It is true that the board is responsible for approving curriculum. Was there any, did you have any discussion in terms, you said not even next steps. So could we perhaps make it action to discuss after the vote to talk about what kind of next steps the board would be looking for? Would that be an appropriate way of keeping this moving forward? So after the vote, since we have the vote for the 3 academic areas, I do have a list of some items that are related but aren't within the vote.
Sure, I was just, so if all we're voting on is the 3 subject matters other than math, and the, the board has, and in some sense, if we just say that the board has not approved that aspect of the report, that we're just on those other 3 subjects, that's fine to move forward.
If you want to state it, can you say that again?
We don't need to take any action if we're clarifying that the motion is only on the 3 options, the options in the 3 subject matters, then we are not taking action either for or against what is written here for math, and we can always come back to it. And I hear what you're saying.
Yeah,
You took it off
Right.
and then getting into the details, and it wouldn't have made sense in your processing. I'm just saying people in the community have raised that question and trying to find out what exactly are we at in math. So I think I would suggest that we're just looking for 3 subject areas, not math, and the board has not yet taken action on the subcommittee's recommendation in regards to math. And since it is a curriculum design decision, it would come back to us.
It needs to be a discussion. I have to be honest, I did not recognize that math in option 3, that self-select was not part of that option. So again, that was not clear. I don't think it was clear to most of us up here.
So are you fine with moving forward with a motion on the 3 subject matters that option 3 is about?
Yeah, as long as it doesn't, we make sure that we keep that.
Math is we're not taking action on math.
I mean, am I okay with it? No, but now that we're here at this place, I don't want to be stuck on the process, so.
Do you have further questions?
I was going to just ask, does the board have any further questions for Heather while she's here?
I can always come back up.
Thank you, Heather. Okay. So before we move along, any other general questions or discussions from the board? We're ready? So this would be then the next step where the board will take individual turns discussing any thoughts to explain that they care to share, to explain how they will vote on the motion. Okay, so I do have some notes here. I will go ahead and kick us off. Let me just get on the vote. So, thank you. It's most of the time I am speaking as president on behalf of the board. This is an opportunity for me to speak as an individual board member, which is a welcome chance I have to take. So first of all, I want to thank you. I want to thank everyone who worked so hard. I want to thank everyone who lent their voice. I want to thank for this perspectives and the expertise, and everyone who really invested in the heart of this question. This is a core of our mission, and I truly believe our students benefit when they have an entire community invested in their success. So thank you. You know, I'd like to, before I get into more detail, offer another general perspective where, you know, over this time, these several months, while I've heard others discuss this as an either-or question, I myself view it as a continuum. If we are to make the best of the limited resources that we have at our disposal, I really firmly believe we have to view these questions as elastic. I really do. I think this is something that you could strive for 100%, but it's impossible to attain, and therefore this is a journey. It's a continuum to discuss. So, to get into some specifics, because I think everyone deserves to hear my background for the vote. So I do find reason to believe that our current system does have some unintended consequences that negatively affect our students. I believe that you know, I believe that we have a responsibility that when faced with this, this information, the board does have a responsibility to look at it really closely. And when thinking about these questions about the best way to look into providing opportunities for students, and there's a reason why I'm stating all these points. Last year, we attended as a board some continuing education at our annual conference for school board directors, the WASDA conference. And one of the breakout sessions that I attended with a couple of my peers was led by a gentleman by the name of Bob Hughes, who is on the State Board of Education. And he has done research about some of the best ways a district can answer some of these tough questions about how do we ensure that we help every student reach their potential. You know, he had charts and graphs for literally every school district, or several school districts, including North Shore, that looked at, he focused during the breakout session on how poverty can affect results on state testing. And while he, you know, not all of the analysis I kind of followed and tracked, I did take away that one of his very strong points was that districts need to provide our most disadvantaged students with the enriching information, what's sometimes called as the opportunity gap instead of the achievement gap. You know, the enriching knowledge, background information, interest-provoking stimuli that you get from field trips and extra readings, Socratic seminars, and the like. So in general, any opportunity that our district can have to offer that to as many students as possible, I think it's part of our mission to do so. So, you know, but while wrestling with this, I don't feel I have enough information that Challenge for All won't have its own unintended negative consequences. I don't have enough detail about remediation options. You know, I also would like to, before I could go down that road, I'd want to understand how we can protect the ability of all students to have enriching electives, as some of our leadership call essentials, not electives. I'm not sure that our current funding model provides enough financial support for substantial effective remediations, you know, because this would be such a large shift. I feel it would be hard to project exactly how much remediation we would be looking at, and therefore the cost, and that I know it can be difficult for some leaders in our district to find the funding for that, and so that's a question I still have open. And I do think that, you know, as a perspective, I've had a student in this district for 15 years, and I have seen the evolution of honors and challenge and all, and I have witnessed different implementations of how communication to students and teachers, you know, what used to be called informed self-select, you know, how do you help guide students along a growth mindset? I think there's still evolution in our district in terms of how to best facilitate that. So given all that I've just said, I will be voting for option 3. I believe it keeps us moving forward from a philosophical level. It does start every student's middle school experience, presuming they can perform at a high level. You know, there was interesting, I was in the meeting where our new principal of North Creek, Eric McDowell, who came from Bellevue, talked about their evolution in Bellevue to a similar system that you might make an analogous to Challenge for All, and where they were at the point where so many students were self-selecting, it made sense to have it become the default, and I would love to see us get to that point. Also, from a structural standpoint, I believe it gives us time, again, to start, you know, by looking at 6th grade in this kind of model. We can study how best to perhaps use that as a goal for all students. You know, it gives us time to put some thoughtful discussions into it. You know, it gives us time for Olympia to resolve some funding questions we have, and it also gives us time to be deliberate in some other important work that the district's pursuing, specifically around equity, and really how to look at this from a system-wide standpoint in terms of supporting all children, but also would like to look at, ask the staff to look at it from a K through 12 standpoint, not just 6 through 8, but really how to support a whole, like my favorite word today, continuum of how to help us get to that place where we do have everyone there. So, and in closing, I do have a couple things. These aren't quite, these are just wonderings I have. You know, I'd be open, I'd want to hear some input from my peers about setting up a structured evaluation system after 2 years. If option 3 does get selected, you know, could we be very deliberate in the beginning about, you know, taking some metrics in 2 years and seeing how we can further expand it. I'd like to ask us to think about, perhaps thinking about this question in a different frame, looking at it by subject instead of just by grade. You know, it occurs to me that perhaps science, you know, I don't teach science, I don't know the curriculum like the back of my hand, but it occurs to me again, if we can offer some of these more in-depth experiences in some subjects earlier than later, you know, it does help all students, and perhaps we can look at it by subject instead of just grade. And I have another idea, but in terms of perhaps, you know, ways of again, you know, if we're going to look at it in 2 years, perhaps can we set some goals, you know, in terms of, you know, achievement for kids coming into middle school. You know, if we hit a certain SBAC ratio, perhaps that triggers it to become the default. Maybe at that point we switch to challenge for all, you know, maybe put some purposeful thought into doing it that way. So that concludes my comments. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak.
This is very hard, being on a dais up here in front of many people and being able to look down in the audience. It's not easy. The board does not get to go behind closed doors like many of the Save Our Challenge or the administrators get to go, and they don't have to sit up here and have this dialogue and this discussion in a public setting. It's not comfortable. It's not fun. It's hard. We don't get paid for it. We put a lot of our own hours in to wrestle with these decisions. And to the community members and the administration and staff that maybe doesn't know my background, I have a master's in counseling psychology. Counseling psychology is about social justice, social advocacy, and social action. It's the primary reason why I sit in this spot, because it's not about counseling on an individual level, because you can't reach a lot of different groups and stakeholders in your community. It's about being able to also go outside of a counseling setting and sit up here in an uncomfortable, very stressful position in front of a lot of people and have this public dialogue and try to do your best to advocate for every constituency group. I don't have all the answers. I'm the first one to tell you guys that, but I do know that I'm on my way to get my doctorate in counseling psychology. I deal with students myself every day who have been disenfranchised in the K through 12 system. I teach at the college level, and in my program I teach adults coming back to get their degree. And by doing that, I have a lot of I teach a lot of online classes and also classes on the ground. And I have 70 students that I advise, and I hear the stories every day from my students that come from the inner city of DC and the inner city of South Central LA. And I do hear stories. I do care very much, and that's one reason why I'm very passionate about these issues. And I don't think I'm the expert, but I think that our whole community should be having the discussion and dialogue. I was also a free reduced lunch kid, and I was in a heterogeneous classroom, and I was made fun of, and I was bullied. And so I don't sit here and I think that had I had these different opportunities that weren't honors, that I didn't have the option to get into because it wasn't self-select, and at the time I don't think that we had because I came from North Shore School District. And by the way, free reduced lunch, there weren't very many of us back then, so we really got lost in that mix. So all that to say is I'm coming from a place of really caring about these issues at a ground level. And we're here to represent the community. That's my job. And so there was a memo that came to the board from within the district that was encouraging board members to maybe not take the time to ask questions up here. It wasn't very nice, I must say. And it really did discourage me because I don't like having these conversations. I'm trying to like find out the information. And so I will continue to ask questions. I will try to be as nice about it as I can. But I will ask questions, and I'm going to not stop doing that, and I'm not going to be intimidated by not doing it. And I spent my week in tears too, so, and that wasn't to get that reaction. I'm just saying I stand up here and I feel intimidated, but then I recognize that that's the job and that's my training in my degree and in my profession. And so I want every voice at the table, and again, I don't have all the answers. So I am going to vote for option 3. It isn't the option that I think is the best choice, but I think it's the compromise choice. And it's a way of, like many of you said, it's a way of bringing the community the community together. I look at, and I think it's really important to look at data. I do research, I teach statistics in the behavioral sciences, and so I'm really like to have solid data in front of me. And when we are going to have the University of Washington do a research project, I want to make sure that we're actually having a research study and program and an evaluation of our program that is our policy. And I thought that was going to be done. And I'm not saying anyone misled us. I just think all of us might not have known exactly what was going to take place. So I'm hoping that we can implement policy 2090 and look at challenge for all with the 6th grade and the 7th and 8th grade self-select challenge, and be able to have an outside company do a program evaluation where there's not feelings involved, bias involved, and that I'm not saying anyone's being biased, by the way, I'm just saying we're not confirming what we want to know on either side. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. And that we could do a program evaluation of both of those simultaneously. And if Challenge for All comes out the right thing, I mean, if that's what someone, when they look at all this data and we actually engage our community, then if that's the data that I have, then, that would be a different conversation. I want to also make sure that we're fully implementing our policy of community engagement, and I know there's some discrepancy on that, but when I'm told as a board member that we're going to send a survey out to our community, and I ask it October 22nd and November 12th, I expect that that's going to be done in the final results. And if not, then I want someone to come tell me and say, here's why, and as a board member to be able to say, okay, well, maybe we should relook at this. So, and that wasn't told to me that we weren't going to be sending that community survey out. And then we have a real problem with the achievement gap starting way before junior high, and challenge is not the issue. So free reduced lunch, the amount of free reduced lunch kids in English 7th grade that are passing the SBAC are at the level 1 and 2 out of 173 students, 98 are at a level 1 and 2. That's before they're getting to junior high. Out of our Hispanic students, it's broken down about the same. So to me, there's a real concern before we get there. And I know being a free reduced lunch kid, it was happening way before I got to junior high. So I don't know what the answers are, but I appreciate all the work you guys do, I do. But I think if we're going to try and integrate our classrooms, one challenge I would make to everyone out there is maybe our administrators could sit all amongst the people, and you guys could all sit over here, because we have this section, and then the parents, and then this section, and I think if we're asking our kids to do it, we should be doing it too. So that would be my challenge.
Thank you. I'd like to start off and thank the students and the parents and the teachers and the counselors who spoke to the board at meetings and with board members, and who emailed the school board with comments, with ideas, information, and suggestions. Thank you to the middle school grade reconfiguration task force and the academic subcommittee for contributing your time and talents to this important work. We're at this junction tonight because we've decided to educate our freshmen at the high schools, and because we can structure the best educational experiences for our middle school students. We strive that each student achieves to their greatest potential. There are different options as the best way to deliver high-quality education to our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. Despite differences, tonight marks a transition. The time of considering options and advocacy is behind us. Now we plan on how we will execute one of these two approaches to the best of our ability. Whether my recommendation is adopted or not, I support the vote of the school board, and I support our teachers, principals, administrators, parents, students, as I know that we achieve our best if we do this critical work together. With these options, the makeup of challenge classes is to be determined by student choice, or classes other than math largely represent the school enrollment. Benefits and shortcomings of both options have been stated. Whether we proceed with option 1 or 3, what is in common is we have the same students, the same teachers, the same curriculum, and the same families. Our experiences studying or working at North Shore is largely in our collective hands. This district is what we students, teachers, families, and staff make of it. I'd like to close with a comment from a book that we were given. It's by John Dewey. The book is called Despite the Best Intentions. And the quote is, what the best and wisest parent wants for his own child, that must be the community want for all of its children. Thank you.
So, I'll echo the thank yous and to all that have spoken and the work that has been done, the countless hours that have been put in. I've heard it all. I've read the many trees that have been produced to sacrifice their life for this conversation. At the end, for me, I was influenced by the students. I volunteer in one of our Title I elementary schools in a 5th grade classroom, and I come during writing time. And last couple of weeks they've been working on a fiction story. They have to write chapters, character development, plot lines, conflict that has to be resolved. And so I work with a couple of kiddos. There's a reason I'm there, helping them. And so I'm reading the story that this kiddo has written, and in the story he's a 10-year-old, the main character is a 10-year-old that's being bullied, and turns to the adults in his life, the teachers, his parents, and nobody can really resolve this. So he goes to the bully and says, look, can't we just be friends? And the bully says, okay. And I'm charmed and thinking, this is lovely, what a great story we're reading here. And then in the last chapter, the bully, the former bully, and this main character are making plans for the summer, what they're going to do, and then the bully cold cocks him, knocks him out. And he comes to, and the end of the story is, and it was the last day of school and he didn't see the kid again. And I'm freaked out, because this is not how I wanted the story to end. And my freaked outness paled in comparison to the other kid that I was working with. He was undone that this is how this was resolved, and was proposing all sorts of alternative endings. Ebola was one of the options. And then these two goofy, squirrely, scattered 10-year-old kiddos and myself had this conversation about what is the writer's responsibility to the reader. Because this kid said, because we were pushing him, you can't end it this way, and he said, sometimes the bully just gets away with it. And so we talked about, is the writer responsible for solving that, having a happy ending, creating resolution, or can the writer leave that? These 10-year-old kids that are never going to get identified as being challenged kiddos. But everybody would benefit from that conversation in the classroom. I also volunteer in an ELL classroom at one of our secondary schools, and helping them with their U.S. history assignments. And they are, the last couple of weeks, dealing with the end of World War II, and their assignment was to role play being an advisor to President Truman and helping him make the decision whether to drop the atomic bomb. And this group of kiddos, these kids that I'm working with, come a wide variety of countries, some whose countries were involved with World War II and some that weren't. And their perspective that they brought to the conversation of what it meant for their country was fascinating. And these are, the vocabulary obviously was very complex. These are difficult for those of us who speak the language. And so there's a lot of translating and getting the 50%, but they understood the concepts just fine. And again, everyone would benefit from hearing that dialogue. I have heard over the last several weeks the commentary. I chose not to do challenge science because I'm not good at it or I don't like it. I've heard I didn't go into reading or writing because I'm not good at it or I don't like it. I'll admit I'm not as articulate at this because my brain would fritz out when it would be reinforcing gender stereotypes. But we can't predict, you can't predict what skill sets you're going to need in the future. The world is changing so quickly, and these kids are going to have 4 or 5 careers. We can't know what it is you're going to need to know in the future. And everyone benefits when we push our kids in science and we push our kids in reading and writing. And we are hearing from the community. Our community colleges, our universities, are expecting all of our students to have been exposed to rigor so that they are ready to go. Our employers are demanding that our students have more rigor so they're ready for the labor force. Our taxpayers are begging that our students, especially today, are ready to be citizens in our democracy. 1/3 of our students are going to spend part of their life working in another country. They need diverse thinking, not like-minded, to be prepared for that. They need to be accessing all of the deep learning that they can. Everyone will benefit if that's the type of students that we are preparing. I was on the board when we unanimously voted to move to challenge. It was a joint work with administration, and it came from a concern that honors was too limited, that there were students that could access a more rigorous curriculum, and that basing it on test scores, parent involvement, and whether your teacher liked you or not was not what we at North Shore believed, and we wanted to open the doors. We heard from the community that they also wanted to open the doors, but then the concerns came that we were going to dumb down the curriculum, that students would take this that weren't qualified, and that there wouldn't be the supports in place for kids in self-select challenge that maybe weren't ready for it. It succeeded beyond our wildest dreams. And then after that, we imposed a requirement that all of our students take 2 AP, IB, college and the high school running start classes. And again, we heard, you can't do this, you're gonna have to dumb down the curriculum, students will be in there that are not ready, you won't have the supports in place. That first group of kids that had that as a graduation requirement are graduating in 3 weeks. And I have not heard any more about having to dumb down curriculum. The rigor in those classes has maintained, test scores are staying high. and kids are succeeding in those classes. We opened more doors. I will be voting no on option 3 because I believe we are ready to open the doors more. Everyone will benefit.
So this is emotional, extremely emotional. And I have, I'm an accountant and a college professor, and I look at evidence, and I keep looking at evidence, and I try not to quit looking at evidence. And I got evidence even today, and I've gone back and forth thinking about what really is the right thing to do. I will be voting for option 3. I'm not going to hold you. But I'm afraid. I'm deeply afraid that this turns into something that's a win or a loss for anyone and everyone. We have so much work to do. We have so much respect and healing to take place. The main thing I learned, I went to Leota Junior High, was invited there by someone who was brave enough to come and share their story. And that person invited me. I said, of course, I'd love to come over, and met with the principal, who I am very pleased is going to step into our curriculum role, and walked around his campus and the school that he is shepherding in such a fabulous and touching way. I went in and out of classrooms. I was in the lunchroom. If you haven't been to one of our junior highs, we need to change our policies to get you there so that you can see how loud and how much reindeer games, fighting and pushing and trying to figure out who we are. I interacted with several students who have challenges that are obvious, and talked with them, and saw how the principal handled one in particular, and we talked with them, and he introduced me to them. The work we have yet to do is way more important, and the respect that we need to give to each other is way more important than this vote. The two ideas that were on the table aren't that far apart. I share the view of Vice President D'Angelo that when we evaluate these programs, when we are ready, I share Director Hayes' view that we should probably be jumping into something like Challenge for All fairly soon. I like option 3 better because it allows us to evaluate. It allows us to focus on the inequities that exist. But this is a hard time for all of us, and I think we need to be very sensitive to each other. I think we need to hug. I've been crying with some of you who've been crying at the dais, and I thank you for being here. And let's move forward.
So unless there's any objection at this time, any objection to calling for the vote? And then I'd like to call for the vote. Before we move on the agenda, there's a couple of related items that I think it's appropriate for us to talk about at this time as a board. Based on, again, as we've been just talking about this for several months, and I think it's helpful for everyone, as you so eloquently put, Director Smith, to keep us moving forward, time for implementation. So, let's talk about, first of all, an idea was presented last board meeting about in a few months. We have some busy months ahead as a board, and the administration is also very busy, but there was an idea floated to convene a review of some learning points to talk about how we might, as we tackle large initiatives in the future, might learn and improve upon. I want to see if that's something the board's ready to talk about now. If we'd like to talk about it later, I'm absolutely in favor of supporting the board on this. I think we have a couple things to chat about, and this is the first one I wanted to bring up. So, does anyone, we have the opportunity this summer to talk as a board about some of our planning going forward for the next school year. That would be an opportunity as well. So please, no pressure to decide now, but this was remaining from last board meeting, so any thoughts?
Have the discussion next board meeting, because I think we're all maxed from this discussion. And I don't know that I can be clear, but I think it's an important discussion for everybody to be able to, for us to be able to look, refine our ways. We should always, if we are a growth mindset in this district, we should be looking for how we can be better and do things better the next time. Keep what's good.
Is the board in favor of that? Anyone like to provide any additional input? Talking about it at next board meeting, or?
Talking about it at the next board meeting?
No.
I'm just trying to clarify what we're
I
doing.
think I would want to be more specific. Again, I think the more defined we can get about this right now, it helps everyone. An idea was floated and was discussed by the board it was a debrief, to do a review of how this unfolded and how we might work. And I would suggest this would be something that, as a board, I would recommend, I'm one of five, but I would recommend that we, and before we start planning too far down the road of how we would, go forward, I would want to ask that we would also, when we're planning this, we would have administration and other members at the discussion from the get-go. So this is not the board talking about the board talking, but we would start getting the process, get some thoughts around it right away. Does that help answer your question?
I'm wondering if 2 weeks might be too soon to start that conversation. Might be a little more time.
We have so much going on, and this is kind of raw, so I think, taking 4 to 6 weeks, and I don't know if that's, start kind of fresh. Is that what you're thinking?
So,
Okay.
is that the board would like to wait 4 to 6 weeks?
Sure. I hear what you're saying, but then if you get too far away, it might be hard to remember some of the things. I think it's just how do we improve and do our task force even better.
I'm putting it on my checklist that in July. Yeah, after, absolutely, okay. Okay. Another item that I think the board should discuss, as a board, it's, again, as Director D'Angelo said, it can be a balancing act when we're sitting on the dais to remember that even if we're not taking an official vote, words that we say can be weighed very much by everyone in attendance. And as board president and spokesperson of the board, I did receive some feedback that based on conversation in the last week, there was wonderings among the staff if some of the questions we were working through as a board was meant to intend that some questions should arise about other work, grade reconfiguration work being done, and I think this is an important question. Again, this is balancing our job, taking actions, but also how we discuss. And I feel that if the board has an inclination to start discussions about other work, about the grade reconfiguration, task forces, we have 3 of them doing a lot of work right now. I think it's better to talk about that sooner rather than later and clear up if it was a misunderstanding, I think it's good to clear it up as soon as possible. Do any board members have any thought about that?
If the question is, there's any other concerns outstanding on the other task forces, I don't think so. I thought that was communicated last time.
I
just, again, I
At
thought
least,
it was.
at least from my perspective, I thought it was very specific to this particular issue.
If there's any program changes we don't know about, but I haven't had that come before us. It sounds like there's the math what we need to be talking about. So, I mean, if there's any major, but it doesn't sound like it,